Alright backers, we've had a few people email and ask if the Jog It CNC pendant is compatible with the Mach 2010 screen set created by Jerry over at CNC Woodworkers. The answer is yes. Jerry was kind enough to make us a custom load screen that works with the Jog It buttons. So I'm going to give you a demonstration on how to use the Jog It pendant with the Mach 2010 screen set. The first thing that you'll need to do is open your G-code file. And again, this is the only time that you'll have to use your mouse and keyboard to interact with your machine. So we'll be cutting out the same smiley face that we did in the other videos. Let me pick up the pendant, and the first thing that we'll need to do to make the machine live is hit the reset button. And now we could jog around. I'm going to show you some differences between this screen set and the standard Mach screen set as far as how you'll use the pendant. Some of the buttons have changed. So in Mach 2010, there's some tabs that allow you to scroll between the different functions. The two that we're going to be using is the Run and the Jog tabs. Now to switch between those two, you use the Step button. So right now it's on Run. If I hit the Step button, it goes over to the Jog screen. Hit it again, it goes back to Run. So let's move over to the Jog screen, and I'll show you how you can jog around. There's two modes. The first is continuous, the second is step, that work with the pendant. In continuous mode, you hit and hold the arrow and the axis moves in that direction at a fixed speed. Now you can change that speed when you're in continuous mode by hitting the jog up and down arrows. So right now you'll notice that the jog speed is at 100%. Hit the down arrow, it's down at 75, 50, 25. So if you've got some big areas to move across, leave it at 100%. If you want to slow down for a little more precise control, you can. The neat thing about these numbers is you can actually set these increments in the settings tab. There's just some boxes that you fill out for whatever you want those numbers to be. So I've just chosen some even numbers to show you the jumps that you can make. If we hit the jog mode button, it'll switch the little green dot down to the step mode. So you can switch back and forth between those, whichever ones you want to use. When we're down in the step mode, these arrows do something different. You notice the step increment right now is 1/1000th of an inch. So I can scroll between some preset numbers there. So now every time I hit an arrow, it doesn't matter if I hit it and hold it or just tap it, it's going to move this predetermined amount when I'm in that step jog mode. So pretty useful if you want some precise control over your axes to zero or touch off some material. So let's put these features into action. I'm going to turn back to continuous jog mode. Oh, and again, the step increments you can change. So I've got them pretty standard numbers, but if you go into the settings tab, you can change those to be whatever you want, which is kind of nice. Let's switch the jog mode over to continuous. Come over to our machine, and we'll use the arrows. We need to reference the center of this foam. So right now it's moving pretty slow. I'm going to turn that jog speed up to 100%. And there we go. That looks like it's in the center. So we come over here and we can hit the 0x button and the XDRO will go to 0. Come back over to the machine. Let's zero the Y. Move this down to where it's just hovering above the center. That looks pretty good. Come back over. Hit the 0Y button and that goes to 0. Now when we jog the Z, I'm going to want to be a little more careful so I don't slam my bit into the material. So I'm going to use the jog down arrow to change the speed from 100% down to, let's do 25%. It'll be pretty slow. So we'll move this down. It's going really slow, and I'm going to get it to where it's just above the foam. Then let's come back over here, hit the jog mode button and change down to step mode. And right now it's at 1/1000th of an inch. That's actually good. Oops, hit the wrong button there. Let's say we wanted to be in make a bigger movement though. I can have it move an inch, but let's get it back down to 1/1000th of an inch because that'll work well for what we're doing. Now when I hit the Z button, doesn't matter if I hit and hold it or if I just tap it, every tap is 1/1000th of an inch. I'm just going to tap that down to where it's just touching the top of the foam. That looks good. Come back over here, hit the 0Z button, and zero that out. So at this point, we're ready to run the program. The start button will do that. Before we can do that, we need to switch from the jog tab over to the run tab. So hit the step button, and now we're over in run. And then when I hit start, the cycle start button is pressed. We come over here and we can watch it start to cut. At any point I can pause it and it stops moving, and then whenever I want to restart it, I just hit the start button. You can also, to stop it, hit the reset button. The only downside to that is you can't start from here again. When you hit start, it'll actually restart the program. So if you want to go from where you left off, use the pause button. But if you want to stop it quickly, use the reset button. When we hit start, it's going to keep cutting. The plus and minus allow you to change the speed. So let me hit the minus down, and you can see that is the feed override, and it's hardly moving now. If I hit the plus, I can speed that back up. Let me slow it down again by hitting and holding that. So you can tap it if you want to move slower, hit and hold it if you want it to go quickly. So we come over here, you can see the feed override. From hitting the plus, it went back up, hit the minus, goes back down, and again, you can move in small movements just by tapping it. So depending on what you want to do. Come back over to our smiley face, put it up to full speed, and let it finish cutting out. So there's a couple buttons on the pendant that we haven't used again. I'll show you what these do. The program started the spindle automatically, but you can start it by hitting the button. So you can see the M7 and the spindle, the router lit up, and I can turn that off by hitting that. The flood button. If you have a vacuum or a water pump on your machine, depending on what you're doing, you can hit the flood button, you see, and that lights up and turns off. And the last button that we haven't used is the home button. So this will send, if you have limit switches on your machine or homing switches, hitting this will send all of the axes to those switches to give you an absolute position. So the pendant, makes it really easy to use the screen set without having to lug your keyboard around. Thank you for watching, and thanks for the pledges.